All right, y'all. This is the Real Housewives of Atlanta. This is season 10. This is part 2 of the reunion. I'm mad, y'all, because I knew that they was going to drag this shit out with Kim within the last 5 to 10 minutes of the show, so I can't really get in her ass the way I want to, but let's get into this second part. So, they talk about the situation that happened between Marlo and Portia in Barcelona. Marlo feels that they both went too far or whatever. And she's like, the Portia, was it like that big of a deal for me to talk about your mat or whatever? And Cynthia was like, well, girl, no, you also kept on pestering her about Kim as well. You know what I'm saying? And Portia, she just feels as though Marlo is toxic and everything, and she just don't see it for her at this point, which is understandable because Marlo be on that bullshit. So they asked Portia, why put the object, why put your fan in Marlo's face and everything, knowing that it would cause a reaction from her, especially when Kenya, did the same thing to you, you know what I'm saying, seasons ago or whatever. And, Portia is like, oh, well, I don't know and everything. And like I told you guys before, I saw like both sides of it, because on one hand I'm like, yeah, Portia, why would you do that, knowing that you went through that shit and made a big fuss about it with Kenya and everything. But at the same time, I also told you guys, I felt like Portia wasn't intentionally trying to just point the fan all up in Marlo's face, like how Kenya was doing with her with the scepter and the bullhorn or whatever. I felt like, like I told you guys before, when you just be talking sometimes and you in an argument with somebody, and, if you got something in your hand, you just be like, whatever, as you arguing, not really like aware that you're like, that you're doing it, but you're not like intentionally just trying to point that shit in the person's face. Like, you understand what I'm saying? So yeah, I saw both sides of it. I felt like with Portia, she wasn't just intentionally just trying to all up in her face like that, like Kenya did with her or whatever. But like I said before, it's just like, yeah, Portia, you shouldn't have did that, because you knew people was going to say something about you doing that, considering the situation that happened between you and Kenya. So Portia just had this I don't know and I don't give a fuck type of attitude, and Andy was trying to point out to her, well, do you not like see the similarities or whatever between those two situations? And Portia is like, yeah, but I could care less, so fucking what, you know what I'm saying? And honestly, I mean, I couldn't be too mad at Portia, because we know Marlo was on one that night. You know what I'm saying? She was drinking, doing the most or whatever. You know what I'm saying? And one of the fans or whatever had asked Marlo, why is it okay for you to come for Portia and her actions, considering that you have a criminal background? You know what I'm saying? And Marlo said, she says that, that's her past or whatever, and she's changed. And Andy, he's like, well, how so? And so she's like, because, I mean, you still steadily causing a ruckus up on this damn show. So, she says that she was on probation and house arrest or whatever. And, she had extra charges added on, which were violations or whatever. Because, like, she'll be, like, for example, like, she was saying how, she'll, like, somebody will catch her out the house or whatever, somebody. Then she brought Kenya into it, somebody like Kenya hating or whatever. And, I would be at the club and they'll call, my PO or whoever and be like, Marlo's at the club and everything, this, that, and the third. And I'm just like, well, why you had to, bring Kenya into it? Like, it really comes off like you do have some type of obsession with Kenya or something, because every time you got to give an example or something, or anytime you're talking about something, somehow you find a way to bring Kenya's name into it, and it's unnecessary. You know what I'm saying? So then, Andy is asking, Portia, how did she feel when Nene had some nice things to say about her at Cynthia's cleansing or whatever? Y'all know that thing that Cynthia, that ceremony or whatever you want to call it, that Cynthia had in Barcelona, where she was doing like a cleansing, rejuvenation or whatever with the candles and stuff like that, and everybody had to say something nice about whoever name that they had. So Portia, she says that, she felt that Nene pretty much was very genuine and just showed her love, and it gave her hope for, the rest of the girls in the group, for, I guess, her relationships with them to be repaired as well. So, Andy is like, why didn't you take Nene's advice about owning up to the fact that you fucked up? You know what I'm saying? And Portia just feels as though that she had already put herself out there so much. She felt, I guess, defeated pretty much. And, every time she would get into it with one of the girls, they would always bring up the situation between her and Candy. You know what I'm saying? And Cynthia's like, well, listen, we watched the whole thing play out. You know what I'm saying? And Portia's like, yeah, but y'all were using that to take digs at me every time y'all had an issue with me. And, using it as a silver bullet. And Cynthia, like, I mean, well, it was. You know what I'm saying? But it wasn't right, though. And like I told you guys before, it was no need for them to keep on going there every time they got into it with Portia. You know what I'm saying? Cynthia, they talk about the fact, because, Cynthia was like, well, because Portia had said something about, I pulled you to the side in San Francisco and opened up to you about, and then that's what Cynthia was like, no, girl, I pulled you to the side in San Francisco, in which you guys remember Cynthia did pull Portia to the side when they was in San Francisco or whatever. And, Portia was, expressing herself to Cynthia about the whole situation with Candy, da da da. And then, Portia is like, but then when we get to Barcelona, you throw the shit up in my face or whatever. You know what I'm saying? And Cynthia's like, well, girl, we were having a moment. And then, one of the viewers had asked, Candy, will she ever have a change of heart towards Portia? And Candy is just like, once again, I feel like the apology was backhanded. And, she's like, I get that you were told this information, but for you to put it out there when you had just heard it, there's no way that you could have felt 100% confident in that lie. You feel what I'm saying? And she's like, listen, we had arguments, but it wasn't to the point where you should have said something like that. You know what I'm saying? And like I told you guys before, I do feel like Portia needs to own up to the fact that she was trying to one-up Candy when they, had their argument last season when they went to lunch together. She should have just owned up to the fact that she was trying to one-up Candy. And then on top of that, of the simple fact that, yeah, like, I've told you guys in past seasons that it seemed like Portia was taking Phaedra's side way more, versus just being neutral, considering the fact that she's supposed to be friends with both Candy and Phaedra. But I guess because Portia went through a divorce herself, I guess that's why it was so easy for her to just automatically jump on Phaedra's side, but it still wasn't right. You know what I'm saying? And then to just go and run, for you to sit up here and run with this lie that Phaedra told you, and you don't even have no proof, and then Candy, you've been around Candy, you was friends with Candy first, before you was friends with Phaedra. Like, Phaedra thought at one point in time your ass was fucking stupid. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, it's just like, being the dead horse at this point. Like I told you guys too, I don't feel like she need to keep on apologizing, but I do feel like she kind of needs to own the fact that she was trying to one-up Candy, and then also own up to the fact that, yeah, I did take Phaedra's side versus just staying neutral or whatever, because, I went through a divorce like she, was going through a divorce, so it was just easier for me to kind of, take her side and everything. But as far as her having to keep on saying, I apologize, and, blah, 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 y'all know, I'm just over the situation. But I do understand Portia does kind of need to own up to those parts of that situation versus just, saying, I own my part. But I'm just over the whole situation, y'all. Portia is like, listen, I'm gonna say this and it ain't gonna be long. And Kenya, that's when she chimes in and is like, Lord, can we have some cocktails? And Nene, she said under her breath, nobody caught it for real. She was like, child, you pregnant, ain't you? I was like, yeah, Kenya, ain't you? But like I told you guys last week, I don't know if Kenya is actually pregnant herself or whether she has a surrogate or whether she plans on to adopt or whatever. But, it was just funny to hear Nene say that. But Portia is saying, listen, I am not blaming you for this situation at all, and I never wanted you to feel like that. It was a bad choice for me to, put that out there, and I apologize for the situation. I apologize for my part, whatever, whatever. And Candy is like, listen, I just, today, let's leave this situation here because, I don't want people to keep on asking us questions about it and it continues to be an issue. It continues to be controversy. So, they shake on it. Cynthia trying to egg them on the hug or whatever. And Portia is like, no, she wants to shake hands. That's what we going to do. We taking baby steps here. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, hopefully we leave this shit in season 10 and we don't carry it on into season 11, okay? So, then we get on the return of Nene and pretty much an overview of her returning back to the show and leading up to the situation with the whole Uber driver incident at the comedy show. And so Andy asks her, how did things escalate um at the comedy show to the point where you wished rape on somebody. And Nene is like, listen, I didn't wish rape on nobody, but it was a comedy show and everything. The person told me to go kill myself. I was going through my little Uber joke and it came out wrong. And I do remember them saying that Nene was drinking that night, so that probably did play a factor into her saying what she said, but still, it was wrong. Although, like I said before, too, the lady saying what she said to her, telling her to go kill herself, that was wrong, too. But we know Nene. We know Nene. You know what I'm saying? We don't know the heckler. We know Nene. So, of course, the consequences is going to fall on her. You know what I'm saying? But, Andy is like, Candy, you kind of sympathize with Nene in the situation or whatever. Can you understand how it would be confusing for somebody like, Sheree or whatever, considering what you went through last year? And Candy is like, well, listen, comedians say inappropriate things sometimes or whatever. So that's why I didn't take it the same way. And like I said before, I did feel like, yeah, Candy, I mean, girl, come on now. You know what I'm saying? Like, you went through some shit last year with Portia, now you kind of sort of, but I understand what Candy was saying. Like, yeah, Nene was making a joke or whatever. It was a bad joke. It was a bad joke. You know what I'm saying? Whereas the shit with her and Portia was something that did personally happen to her. Portia was really trying to, you know, Portia, was kind of trying to tarnish her brand or whatever. It was something that personally happened to her. So I get what Candy is saying on, that situation. But Sheree, she's just like, I would never say something like that to anyone or whatever, considering that, especially because I'm a domestic violence victim and da da da. Nene is like, well, I've been supporting women since day one, since, the beginning of, Real Housewives of Atlanta. And which, those of you who've been watching since season one, that is true. You know what I'm saying? But like I said, too, us knowing that, that's why it was even more disappointing, because if you've been watching the show for the last 10 years, you know that Nene has been a supporter of women since day one, women going through sexual abuse and domestic violence. So for her to, say that, it was just like, it really was just like, wow, Nene, really? And you went through, you know what I'm saying? But, yeah. Nene says that, it was a bad choice of words. She would never want anything bad like that to happen to no woman or nothing like that. You know what I'm saying? Um, they ask, they asked Kenya, is she surprised at, Nene and Marlo being so close now, considering, they're falling out or whatever. And Kenya says, considering what I know, yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, I am surprised because, Marlo is a snake. And so Marlo, she's like, you just try to speak so well and everything. And Kenya is like, yeah, I've always spoke well. Blame that on my grandma, And Marlo, she says that it hurts her that, She's like, like how you said it hurt you when I brought up your mother last season and everything. It hurts me how you keep on calling me a whore and a prostitute. Like, where are the receipts at? And I'm like, Marlo, that ain't the same thing. Somebody calling you a whore and a prostitute, and you talking about somebody mama, it ain't the same thing. But okay. But Kenya is like, oh my God, Kenya, she ain't have no type of sympathy. She was like, girl, bye. Like, we asked you plenty of times where you worked at, and you still haven't gave us like a solid answer. And Kenya got a point. Like, like, bitch, where do you work at? You know what I'm saying? So, Andy, he's like, well, where do you work? And she's like, well, I dated a billionaire and everything. And pretty much from the billionaire that she dated, I guess whatever money he was giving her, she invested well, and she says that her business is Simply Marlowe LLC, and I'm just like, okay, girl, whatever. So, Portia, she chimes in and she says, and in the future, in arguing with somebody, I wouldn't want them to, call me a prostitute or whatever if you don't have something behind it. And I looked at Portia, I said, now, Portia, all this riffraff you been causing, not even just the shit with Candy, but you done said shit about Cynthia's husband, not knowing if it was true or not, saying shit about Kenya dating the African, like, now girl, you the last one that need to be talking. She should have just kept her mouth zip on that one, okay? And then Kenya is like, girl, you was saying I was a part of a prostitution ring, and how I was dating the African and all this other stuff, this, that, and the third, and they had to remind Portia about the shit that she said and everything. So, Eva, she comes out, and actually earlier on, they showed backstage Eva having contractions, and her talking to Dr. Jackie and everything, and so she comes out, and they're talking about we might have a reunion baby here and everything, and I'm like, oh Lord, please. We don't need that going on, and I'm pretty sure Eva don't want to have no baby at the reunion either. Okay, so they talk about the fact of her and Mike being engaged, which we already know or whatever. And she knew that she was pregnant when they went on the Barcelona trip. And, I was like, oh, so that's why you were saying you don't smoke and drink. Okay, it makes sense, And so then, Candy was the only one who knew. And Candy was like, yeah, see, I know how to keep secrets or whatever. And Cynthia, she was like, oh, man, whatever. Like, Eva, you could have told me. I would have kept the secret or whatever. I said, Eva, you made the right decision. Okay. So anyways, Andy is asking Cynthia, why do you come on to Candy so hard? You know what I'm saying? And Cynthia's like, I mean, that was on my bucket list. And Portia is like, to come on to Candy, you know what I'm saying? And, Kenya, she's like, Cynthia actually gets mad when Candy chooses others because she wants to be Candy's crush and everything. And oh my God, this whole segment just kind of cracked me up a little bit, and Candy, she was like, Cynthia brought me a pair of shoes or whatever, she my sugar mama and everything, and Cynthia, she's blushing and putting her head down and stuff, and Candy like, you gonna be my crush, you gotta live in this shit, and you can't be ashamed or whatever, you gotta own it, you know what I'm saying, and, Cynthia, because Nene is like, Cynthia been wanting to try the other side. Cynthia, she denies it, but I really do think Cynthia wants to try the other side. The way that she be acting with Candy or whatever, like, girl, yeah, she tried to say that she just be joking around with Candy. Yeah, okay, Cynthia, you want some of Candy for real, okay? But they they get into Cynthia's situationship with Will. And Andy asks, did they sleep together or whatever? And surprisingly, Cynthia says that, well, it was going towards that way, at least for me. But to answer your question, no, we haven't slept together yet. And I'm like, well, girl, what is you doing? Then if y'all ain't sleep together, the hell you doing all this extra shit for? You know what I'm saying? Like, I was shocked like everybody else. Like, So if y'all ain't sleep together, you doing a whole lot extra for somebody you ain't. But okay, you know what I'm saying? That's what makes it even worse. Y'all haven't even slept together, and you doing all this crying and carrying on about him, child. Anyway, so they asked Eva, pretty much, you sitting up here saying, feeling some type of way because Shamia asked you about your sexuality or started a rumor, asking you about rumors in regards to your sexuality, but openly started a rumor up about Will and everything. And Eva is like, well, the difference with, Messy Mia, that's what she calls her, and Will, is that the shit with Shamia was a rumor. The shit real. The shit with Will was real. The information that I knew about Will was real or whatever. So they the fans, they're like, even though Portia is not a reliable source when it comes to information, if there's 3 or 4 other people telling you that your man is shady, why continue to fall for the okie doke? Pretty much. Like, is he that good in bed? And then, Andy is like, well, sure, we ain't got an answer for that because she ain't sleep with him. You know what I'm saying? And so, Cynthia's just saying that it was a lot going on that night or whatever, and then Portia coming up to her, telling her, this information just kind of, blew the shit wide open. And shit, Portia really didn't say no new information but what everybody else was saying. So, but Andy is like, well, in Portia's defense, you did ask her. You know what I'm saying? And Cynthia's like, yeah, well, off camera though, she, had been saying that, that he was such a good guy. So then her presenting this new information to me, it just, caught me off guard or whatever. And then, plus I thought what she had to tell me was going to be a good answer based off the fact that she was kind of a cheerleader for him at first or whatever. And so Candy is like, so we can only tell you good news? And then Cynthia's like, no, that's not what I'm saying. But me and Portia have a history. She said some shit about Peter or whatever, this, that, and the third. And Portia is like, well, see, I apologize to you, after later on that night, I did apologize to you because I didn't mean to make you cry and everything. And Cynthia, she accepted the apology or whatever, but she ain't text back, but she accepted the apology. But Portia is like, in Barcelona, like, she was like, I thought that me and you was making strides to like build a friendship. And she's like, in Barcelona, you said you didn't know me, and then you bringing up the whole Candy situation. And then, Cynthia's like, listen, I don't know you, no, she was like, I'm still getting to know you. And she's like, listen, I've been in this circle for 8 years and I still don't know Andy that well and everything. And it's like, I guess I can understand what Cynthia is saying. I guess because she's not the closest to Portia in the group, she feels as though she doesn't know her or still getting to know her. But I feel like you being around her since season 5, because I believe that's when Portia had came in. I feel like you know her well enough, because you know her well enough for you to be in your confessional to be like, Portia, don't never own up to her shit and whatever else you be saying about Portia. So you might not know her on the level that you think you should know her, but you know her well enough, and you definitely have been knowing her way longer than Will. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, Cynthia be killing me talking about something she's still trying to get to know somebody. But I guess in a way I could kind of understand what she's saying. But she says that her and Will are taking some time apart right now, but she's dating other people, so whatever. Then we get Master Kim. So she comes out or whatever with her red solo cup as always. And Andy is like, you look, younger today than you did 10 years ago. I said, I don't know who the fuck you telling that lie to, Andy, but okay. So, he's like, and your lips are bigger or whatever. And he's like, what's the end game on that? On, keep on getting your lips done or whatever. And and she just answered the question so freely and everything. And I'm just like, he just shaded the fuck out of you. And I'm telling y'all that shit had me weak. He said, "When is the end game?" Like even Andy tired of your motherfucking ass filling up your goddamn lips every time we turn around. So anyways, they talk about the elephant room. And Nini's goal was for her to get the girls together because it seemed like they were always making about her and Portia when there were other elephants in the group that nobody wanted to talk about. And so they had asked Kim, what does she mean by saying that she's from a higher power when they were at the elephant room? And Kim, she's saying that, she was just saying that she's like on a different frequency than the lady that was, at the elephant room, than the median or whatever. So, Kenya, she's like, well, what higher power is that? The devil? Because, every time she comes around, the energy shifts. You know what I'm saying? And Andy is like, why were you holding Portia's hand at the elephant room? And Kim is like, well, Kenya has a way of pushing buttons or whatever, so I just needed her to hold my hand or whatever, this, that, and the third. And they asked Kim why Cynthia isn't allowed to have an opinion on anything. And Kim is like, because then her sitting up here telling Cynthia, Cynthia, just be quiet, my love. Just sit pretty or whatever she said to Cynthia. And Kim is like, well, I always thought that Cynthia was beautiful, but I don't want to get to know Kenya. I don't like Kenya, so it's just like it was just enough. I didn't need to hear no more from her. So Cynthia's like, well, I feel like you're always taking a dig at me. And then she was like, Kim was like, when did I take a dig at you? And then, she's like, you and Sheree, has said that I probably wouldn't have gotten so far in life if I wasn't so beautiful. Sheree doesn't recall, but they showed a clip, and I didn't even know that they were doing this, but I guess they had some after show thing going on, and Kim and Sheree was sitting on the couch or whatever, on some couch, and they was, I guess, talking about the show, and then that's when they showed that Kim had said that, and like Sheree was just, laughing or kind of co-signing or whatever. So, Andy reminds them, like, yeah, Kim, you did say that, and Sheree, you were there, And Kim, she just feels like Cynthia doesn't have a backbone, which we all have been saying for years. And but she was like, but I don't have an issue with Cynthia. And Cynthia's like, well, Kim, I don't think you have any class, but I mean, tomato, tomato. You know what I'm saying? And Andy is even trying to tell Kim that it's a dig. You come off condescending and everything by sitting up here telling somebody to just sit there and look beautiful, like as if, they're just a fucking airhead or whatever. And so Kim, of course, she doesn't see it that way. Andy says to Nene, you didn't address your elephants with Sheree. And Nene felt as though hers wasn't that important or whatever. And she says the only issue that she has is with Kim. You know what I'm saying? And I think they had asked, well, I think Andy had asked Nene where did the issue start. And then Nene is like, well, I saw Kim at the mall before my all-white party. And, she had her head up in the air and just, acting like she, couldn't speak or whatever. But then, she's taking videos of my car or whatever. And then you come to my house and asking about the handicap spot. And, Kim, she's like, who gives a fuck or whatever. And Nene is, about, you're mad because I didn't see you and everything. And Nene is like, bitch, I could give a fuck whether you saw me or not. I could give a fuck about your hello. I want to talk about the shit that you did that you thought was cool to do. You know what I'm saying? And Kim tries to claim that the video or the picture of Nene's car was sent to her, but they rewind the tapes back and she said that she saw Nene. That she saw Nene and she showed Sheree the picture. Like, why does Kim lie knowing that the tapes is going to be ran back and then she'll still try to sit up here and lie? Like, really? You know what I'm saying? And so Nene, she getting hyped up and everything. Kim tried to tell Nene to stay seated, and Nene is like, "No, you better stay seated or whatever, because you talked all that bullshit, talk all that shit that you all that shit that you was talking, talk that shit now while I'm right fucking here." You know what I'm saying? And then Kim tries to say Nene is a hater, and they going back and forth a little bit, and that pretty much was it. Like I said, I couldn't really get into Kim's ass the way I wanted to because she came like the last 5 to 10 minutes of the show. But best believe next week I will be getting to her motherfucking ass, okay? So make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure you guys come back, and I'll see you guys in the next video. All right, y'all. Bye.